Was it a stomach flu? Because there's a stomach flu going around. I know that.
Oh, well, that might be what happened with that. Yeah, my husband had a stomach bug last week, and then my older son got sick this weekend and was fine. And then he started feeling poorly this morning. So we kept him home just in case, but he was fine today.
Yeah. Well, it's such an uncomfortable time when somebody's not feeling well, right? The first thought is COVID. No. All right. What time are we at?
At 5:57.
Oh, 5:57. Okay. Okay. I would wait right till 6. Yeah. And then we kind of let them stream in a little bit, and then we roll in a couple minutes after we give a couple minute grace. Not many. Reward those that are on time.
Let's see. Johnelle, I like your idea. Is it okay if we have matching background?
I guess I should do mine the reverse way so the UTSA is not backwards. That looks kind of weird.
Oh, I see. There we go.
I just didn't think my Rosebud Motel one was as appropriate when I have to be profesh.
That was my maternity leave, or well, my summer indulgence was watching that series.
Oh, I don't know about this series. Is it a good one?
Schitt's Creek.
If you like sarcasm.
No, I got to go back to it because somebody else was just saying how much they really, really loved it. And I tried an episode or two, but it was
better.
Early in COVID, and I think I just wasn't in the right frame of mind.
We were the same. Like, we weren't into it initially, and then we started it again, and we were like, this is really funny.
Okay. I do like those two actors because they've been in other things.
Mm-hmm.
They did the whole thing about the dog show.
Yeah.
What was that one?
Best in Show.
Yes, that was hilarious. So yeah, so I do like them. So where are we at?
When till?
5:59 and counting. So just so you know, I'm just gonna just kind of do a little bit of a hello, kind of let people know where I'm sitting, and then introduce you to, and then is there at any time, do you need me to do any, you didn't send me any questions or prompts or whatever. I figured you probably would go back and forth with each other if there was that, or you had mentioned kind of pausing and seeing if any questions come in at different points in the presentation, right?
Yeah, there's some discussion points where we can have people, if they want to talk, they could.
Yeah, go ahead. So we're going to go ahead and open up and let everybody in. And are they muted? Are the guests muted? Okay. We are viewing. Just let me know when they're in. Are they in? Yeah. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us tonight for another part in our series on wellness and trying to bridge the community with our university and what we do here at La Cantera Resort and Spa. My name is Laura Crone. I'm the Director of Wellness, Recreation, and Retail. And I'm here tonight to host two speakers for us tonight, speaking about personal well-being, a complex web. We're excited to hear from them. I'm going to go ahead and just do the introduction right now, and then we will let them take it away. So tonight we have Johnelle Sparks, who's got a PhD and is a professor of demography and assistant dean for faculty success and administration at the UTSA here in San Antonio. She's also adjunct faculty in the Department of, oh gosh, ophthalmology, it looks like. Sorry, it's a little breezy out here. And population health sciences at UT Health San Antonio. Her research can be grouped into 4 areas of concentration: premature aging, allostatic load and mortality, spatial inequality and disparities in health and mortality. 3, inequality related to segregation, poverty, and education. And 4, transdisciplinary epidemiology studies. Dr. Sparks, she loves spending time with her husband, 2 active sons, a German Shepherd. She enjoys yoga and cooking vegan meals for friends. So really looking forward to hearing what she brings to us with a lot of research-backed information. And then kind of, I'm sure she's going to have some anecdotal aspects to be able to share about application. And then we also have Erica Wallace, and she's a lecturer in the Department of Public Health at UTSA. She is a National Certified Health Education Specialist and an educator for Mental Health First Aid USA. Ms. Wallace has worked in health promotion for over a decade with extensive experience in health behavior change, adult education, and mental health awareness. She lives in San Antonio with her family and enjoys hiking and kayaking in the hill country, bar workouts, and enjoys all the delicious food the area has to offer. She also has a couple of boys. So I'm really excited to hear tonight. I have a master's in public health, and it's always been a dream to integrate public health and more science-backed health and wellness research and data into what we do in our spas, because we seem to capture a different audience that might go to a lecture series typically. So really excited to be able to partner with UTSA, and I'm going to let Johnelle take it away for us tonight, and there'll be opportunities I'll pop back in here and there. So thank you so much, everybody, and enjoy.
Thank you, Laura. Erica and I appreciate you inviting us to be a part of the series. I think it's really exciting, and it can really highlight the different type of work that our new college, the College for Health, Community and Policy, does at UTSA. And we're going to approach this from our different perspectives. So me more in a research space, I study mortality, which doesn't sound super exciting, but I think we're all interested in knowing how we can extend our lives and how we can live healthier longer, which is what a lot of that literature talks about. And Erica's going to be able to help ground this into practical applications and how we can think about well-being in terms of our decision-making and how we interact with our families, our communities. So hopefully we'll have some points for discussion and get you to think about some ways that you can approach your own well-being. So I think we'll go ahead and move forward and go for our agenda for the evening. We'll talk about just first, what is well-being, because it's a term that's used a lot and can mean different things if we're talking about it in terms of an academic setting or how it's used from Laura's perspective at the spa. We're going to talk about what the literature tells us about certain concepts around well-being, and then we'll also talk about some strategies that we can use to enhance our well-being and thinking about how we care for ourselves in a way to promote our own health. And then we're going to have some reflection questions and activities that you can use after this so that you can continue to reflect on how well-being is an important part of your everyday lives, particularly as we're in the current environment. And we may be sacrificing some of the components of well-being that we'll talk about, but that are integral in thinking about it as a larger concept. So Erica, I'm going to let you go ahead and give a discussion of how we define well-being.
Thanks, Johnelle, and I am excited to be here with y'all tonight. And or at least I hear a lot of interest in wellness and well-being. And so I wanted to go over what well-being is and also what it is not. And you see here that there is an image with 8 dimensions, and we will use wellness and well-being interchangeably tonight. And well-being at its core is about recognizing that our health, our happiness, our pursuit of joy in life is not dependent on any one single factor. And well-being can be a resource for us to cope with challenges. it's holistic in that it incorporates all of these multiple dimensions. And if you ever see these dimensions, there are many different models that are used depending on its application. So you may see a model with 5 dimensions, you may see one with more than what's pictured here. The important thing is that it looks at multiple factors of our being. And it's dynamic. Our well-being can change from day to day. I was chatting with Johnelle and Laura beforehand, and we've had sickness in my family this week, and it's been challenging. And so I've had to tap into some resources of my well-being to make up for the lack in others. And I think a lot of us are probably interested in the pursuit of what balance looks like in our lives. And this dynamic state means we're never going to be equal in any of these dimensions, but we're constantly going to be finding that give and take that allows us to have everything that we need to live fully functional lives and get to that point where we feel like we're thriving a bit. And I should say it's also subjective. What is important for my well-being might not be something that you prioritize as much. So for example, physically right now I have a teething toddler, and so I'm not able to prioritize my sleep, and I'm having to tap into those other resources. Whereas you might find a different dimension that you need to focus on, and how much you need to fill the cup in that dimension. Tonight, we're primarily going to focus on 3 dimensions: the emotional, the social, and the spiritual, recognizing that we all need these. And so 2 of the resources that will be included tonight that Laura will be sending out, and then I'll also add to the chat box a little bit later, are resources that let you fully engage with these different dimensions. And you can use them at your own time. I don't want to say it's homework, but if you wanted to use it at home to figure out what areas you are fulfilled in, and then what areas you could be more fulfilled in, they would be very powerful tools for you. Right? Do I have a question? All right, and we are monitoring the chat box this evening. And so when Johnelle's speaking, I'll be monitoring the chat box, and we're also happy to answer questions along the way. And then we will have a couple of breaks for questions. And then when I'm speaking later, Johnelle can help with the chat box, or Laura. All right, Johnelle, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you. So I'll start a little bit by just saying, as a demographer, I study populations. I'm interested in different types of population dynamics. And I think one thing to think about too, as we think about well-being, is we're going to talk about more of the interpersonal dynamics and how we think of those kind of relationships as being important for thinking about our own personal well-being. But I think it's also important to think of, yeah, hopefully I stay unmuted. We can think about structural systems that also lead to well-being. So we can think about healthy communities or healthy cities. We can think about healthy organizations and the well-being of those as well. So I think it's important to think about those different contexts, particularly as you go on through some of the reflection, to think about, is there well-being in the types of activities or organizations that I'm engaging with as well? So the 3 types of groupings I'm going to talk about today that is based on the research literature is based on social relationships, community engagement, and sense of belonging. So I'm going to give you a bit of what the literature tells us around these areas as they relate to well-being. So the literature would tell us that having positive and encouraging social relationships is positive for our health and well-being. And I think we can all relate to that. We look to people like our spouses, our children, friends, extended family, coworkers as support systems that we can ask for in time of need, and think about how these people can help us to balance those different dimensions of our well-being. I think one of the things that's really important when we talk about marriage is the literature is well established in looking at the relationship between marriage and mortality. And what we find is that people that are married tend to have more of a protection against death than people that are not. And we see that there's more of a benefit for men than in women, mainly because it helps to adjust risk behaviors. But I think a dimension that's not looked at as much in larger population studies is quality of a relationship. So when we talk about these 2, we want to think about, are we in respectful, mutually agreeable types of relationships, because if any of these relationships we're talking about are harmful, those obviously can have an impact on our health and well-being. And so then we might need to come up with strategies of how we mitigate the exposure to those negative relationships. We also see that children can be a really important source of social relationships for parents, so that they can provide that immediate nuclear family type of relationships. But we also see that children help parents to form friendship networks because their children interact in school or preschool or through sports or other types of activities. So children can provide a lot of love and support for parents in a way that leads to their overall identity in a social sphere. We also want to think about friends, and friends become really important, particularly as we age, particularly if you lose a spouse or family tends to move off. Friendships often become the way that we identify closest with our social relationships, and can use those kind of benefits from friends to help us if we're ill and need help accessing maybe groceries or food, or we're going through a tough time and we need someone to talk to and need that emotional support. Just knowing that someone's there. And a lot of the literature often asks around social relationships, do you have someone that could help you if there was an emergency in the middle of the night? Or do you have someone that could help you with emergency funds if you needed it? And a lot of that showing that you have someone that you can trust and rely on. And those become critical to that sense of having a social relationship that's protective of your well-being. Another social relationship that I think is really important, and I'm in this, I'm sandwiched. So I'm a caregiver to my father and my mother-in-law, and I also have 2 young kids. So caregivers can become really important too when we think about social relationships. In the United States, we often see caregivers as either more formal relationships, so either a paid service or using something else. But in a lot of other settings internationally, it's really the family's role to have this intergenerational family that helps to take care of one another. But I think another thing we have to think about is what is the reciprocal relationship going on with social relationships. So we have to make sure that we're taking time for the caregiver to make sure that their needs are met as well, and they aren't taken over by the demands of the caregiving. So all of these social relationships can be very impactful. They can be positive, but they also can lead to negative consequences if we have negative relationships or harmful relationships. So it's important that we nurture these more positive social relationships with family and friends. Erica, can I have you move on to the next concept? And again, if there's questions, feel free to leave those in the chat or ask a question. Another thing that's important for our well-being is thinking of a sense of belonging. So part of that is, how do we identify with our personal environment? And we can think of that most immediately as our local neighborhood, our city, or a particular area that we identify where we were born, or that's been important to us, maybe where we attended college or high school, where we've had a major life event. And so often we have these certain connections with this place that can be really important for us because it helps to build those social relationships. It gives us a sense of who we are and our identity. And all of that can help to contribute to our sense of belonging and that this is part of who we are. Well, I guess I skipped one, didn't I? But we can keep going. We'll go back to the other one in a second. The other is how we think about the connections that we have outside of ourselves. So one of the things that I find really helpful in my role as Associate Dean for Faculty Success is when mentoring faculty and staff, we want to think about how much time do we give ourselves for reflection? And so a lot of the activities that Erica will have later and for you to take home is important to think about, how am I feeling about these different components of my well-being? And do I have enough time to sit and really think about, am I connected to this sense of this environment, or my sense of social connections, or each of those 8 dimensions that we showed you. So I think part of it is, can we see that something is important outside of ourselves and we want to give to that? A couple of the other dimensions that are part of sense of belonging are our ideas of safety and how we view how safe we are in our local environments, as well as how we identify a neighborhood. So often what we'll see around safety is that people live in areas that have high congestion or traffic, that it looks like there are not many inhabited houses, or let's say there's a lot of turnover, or there is something called the broken windows index. So a lot of boarded up homes, a lot of litter. People often don't feel safe in those environments. So maybe they're less willing to get out to go for walks or to interact with their neighbors. And that could impact their well-being because they're not interacting in that space in a way that they might if they lived in an area where they felt safer. So a lot of that is being able to assess, how do you feel in your local space, and does that help you to engage in meaningful relationships? And I think neighborhood sense of belonging is such an important element because one, it helps to give us some type of identity relative to that, but it also gives us a sense if this is a place where people are very open and welcoming. If you feel that you get to be a part of the group in the decision making, if there's a place for interaction, if you have a family, can children play together outside and have a safe environment to do that in? So sense of belonging, I think, is a little bit more of an abstract type of concept that requires you to really think about how you interact in your personal and environmental spaces. But it can be really important to give some reflection to that, to think, am I engaging in a way that is productive for my overall mental state, my health, and my well-being? Or are there ways that I could help to improve that so that I can build community, that I can create an environment that really focuses on well-being? And we can see this in places where you have things like neighborhood 5Ks, or you have a strong commitment to a local farmers market so that people have access to fresh fruits and vegetables. And there's different types of activities that can be done to help build that sense of belonging, and that there is a shared commitment to one another and to how that space functions, and kind of the norms and rules around that that can be protective of your well-being. We're going to go back to our community engagement. And I think this is one in the literature that's quite interesting, because the literature is pretty strong on this. And I think there's a lot of confusion as to what we see when we see this within big data. So one of the strongest associations in the health and mortality literature is between church attendance and mortality. So that you find that regular church attendees tend to have better mortality outcomes, meaning that they have later ages at death, and are less likely to die in a follow-up period. But there's a lot of questions around what does that mean, because there is congruent literature that talks about the role of spirituality. So a lot of people are comfortable talking about being active in a church, but a lot of people aren't comfortable with that, or maybe not identify with that type of culture, but they can identify as being spiritual. And I think a lot of it comes down to building relationships, and again, having some sense of something greater than oneself, so that when something bad happens, like Erica was talking about this week, she's having to deal with some illness in her family, but she's able to see that they can get past this and get back to balancing out those different dimensions of well-being. And I think a lot of what comes and is noted in literature between church participation and attendance is that by being engaged in a church community, you have people that are somewhat monitoring your activities, that are checking in on you when you're not present. So if you're sick or need help, they're there to help and assist with you. If you're sick or just need some extra care, you tend to form stronger networks because there is that spiritual bond that can connect people. But then there is this bigger sense of something outside of oneself that can remove you from bad situations or thinking that everything is your own fault, and that you can see the bigger part of how you're pulling that together and thinking about your well-being as a whole. Another thing that we see is people that are philanthropic or engaged in different types of philanthropy tend to have better health outcomes than others. And again, part of that is that you have a commitment to another cause and you're willing to work for the benefit of others or some type of cause. Again, it's part of it is building social relationships so that you're making those connections as part of the activities that you're engaging in, but that you're looking to see that your well-being can extend to others and that you can give the things that you're strong in to help other people help to balance out their own well-being. So there's a fairly strong connection there. We also see it with sports leagues. So we tend to see that people are more active, tend to have better health and well-being. And it's one of those unfortunate cycles that often it's the reverse. Sometimes it's because of an injury or disability that you may not be able to participate in these activities, but then there are other types of spaces where you can engage. So through philanthropy, church, other kinds of special interest clubs as we have here. But we see that sports league provide, again, a chance for a positive, healthy activity to engage in and some accountability. So people expect you to perform at a certain level or to be active with the league and make sure you're meeting games and practices. So having that accountability can be really important for health and well-being. And there can be a host of special interest clubs, whether that be around a specific neighborhood, maybe an ethnic identity, maybe you sew, or you have a book club or some other type of activity that at least brings people together. But again, it's being able to spend time in an activity that you enjoy. So you are devoting time to yourself as part of self-care, but then you're getting to share that with like-minded people in a way that you can support one another and offer other kinds of connections as they relate to that interest. So if we think about these in terms of different elements that are linked to overall health and well-being, we can see that the literature shows that by being in healthy relationships, by being active within our communities and engaging in diverse types of activities, and also having a strong sense of who we are based on where we belong, can be really protective of our health and well-being. The thing I would just caution is, in our current situation with the COVID pandemic, is a lot of these activities may be limited, or they may only be available through a medium like we're using now, through Zoom, which can be really tiring. And so the thing I would have you think about as some of these things that you might be thinking about in terms of your own life and your relationships is, what do you want these things to look like when we can interact safely again? And how could you engage in some of these types of activities in a way that could help to increase your well-being and not add to your stress, because we know that stress is harmful for our health and well-being. So what might be a couple of activities you really want to invest in so that you can see the benefit without feeling stress from being pulled in too many different ways, or not being able to have time for that reflection to think about, how can I enhance my own personal well-being and help the well-being of those around me? So I'll stop here now in case there's any questions, but then we'll move on to our next section. I see a comment. Okay.
This is Laura again. I was just going to say that I love the aspects of speaking to the different control factors, if you will, that happen in our community environments, and how easy it is to kind of overlook the importance of having a safe environment to call home and walk through, and how that can impact your overall well-being. So thank you for bringing that up, because it's not often a component of what's discussed in wellness and well-being. In the spa world, they look at wellness as the lifestyle and the well-being as your personal health.
Right.
So that you choose things that enhance your wellness lifestyle, which overall improves your personal well-being in the sense of your emotional, spiritual, physical, financial. So I love your perspective. Thank you.
And if I can add just a couple of things to that, a couple of other things in the literature that are shown really important for the environment are things like walkability. So how easily can you navigate your local space? So are there sidewalks? Is public transportation available? Are you dependent on cars? So in Texas and in San Antonio, we're usually dependent on cars. But if you think about cities where people don't use a personal car, but they need something else, do they have easy access to that transport? The other thing I would have you think about is access to healthy food resources. So what is the grocery store environment in your area? So do all of your neighbors have access to healthy food in a way that they can prepare to feed their body, right? So that they can engage in these types of activities that can be renewing for them. And in San Antonio, I think one of the huge advantages of having the great grocery store H-E-B here is, while the H-E-B stores differ in size and the type of products they have, H-E-B has been really committed to making sure that food prices are the same across the city, so that you're not paying a different price if you're in a different neighborhood than another, so that a higher income neighborhood is not paying more or less for a product than a low income neighborhood. And so that really helps with that accessibility and buying into that idea that we have to think holistically about how we take care of ourselves.
I don't see anybody dropping any questions into the chat. So if you want to move on, I think we can.
All right, and as I prepare to move forward, I would love if anyone has any takeaways from Johnelle's talk, if you would put those in the chat, because the part I'm going to be talking about is, how do we connect those benefits to the things that you and I can do every day to get that health promoting effect. So we'll move into that application piece now. Hopefully you have heard Johnelle talk about these positive attributes, and most of us would say we want to be healthier, we want longevity, we want to have a longer and fuller life. And so now that we have discussed some of these aspects of well-being, you're hopefully thinking about some steps that you can take in your personal life to improve the quality of your social relationships, to get more engaged with your community, and to develop that stronger sense of belonging. And so I want to talk to you about behavior change, because this is an area where a lot of us struggle. Many of us have probably tried to change our behaviors, whether it's, getting more sleep at night or drinking more water during the day. And a lot of times there are challenges. Oftentimes we might make very ambitious goals around New Year's and have a resolution. And most of the research suggests that the vast majority of us are not going to be successful and have sustained behavior change. But the research does provide some evidence for us that we can incorporate into the behaviors that we want to change. And so one of the first ones I would suggest is focusing on the quality of what you want to change over the quantity of your goals. If I were to move back to that multi-dimensional model of well-being, we might have multiple areas that we want to change and improve. But research tells us that if we choose one or two things to focus on and put our whole efforts behind them, we're going to be more successful and more sustainable with those. Some of the newer research also suggests that sticking with positive behavior changes, so adding in the good things, is more powerful and more sustainable than trying to take away the negative things. So Johnelle was bringing up the great point about having access to nutritious foods. Most of us can benefit from increasing our fruit and vegetable intake, but oftentimes when we think about improving our diet, we think about taking away certain foods. If we're filling our bodies with more nutritious and nutrient-dense foods like vegetables, like fruits, like lean proteins, we're going to naturally start to want those more and to want the filler foods a little bit less. And so, hang on, let's see. Oh, I don't have mute capabilities. So it sounds like a couple of participants aren't muted right now. And so what we want to do is try and think about those goals and incorporating those things that we want to do. So exercise is a great example of this. And there are a lot of practical applications we can talk about that do double duty. And so you can hit those multiple dimensions, even among the three areas that Johnelle discussed. And so if you want community engagement and you want to build quality relationships, just starting walking with your family in the evening might be a great way to do that. Or if you don't have necessarily family nearby, do you have a neighbor or a friend, and you can start incorporating those things and adding those positive things into your regular schedule. And small steps, we all have either done it ourselves or known someone who has, where we got super ambitious. We cleared out everything in our fridge and our pantry. We went to Whole Foods. We spent way too much money. We started with those kale shakes every single day. And I love a green smoothie, y'all. I'm not knocking that, but oftentimes we try to do too much too fast and we get burnt out on trying to do everything. I see it with the students I teach and the students I've worked with in the past. When they wanted to do behavior change, they want to do all or nothing. But research is very clear. Starting with those small steps is the key to making behavior change. And the last one I want to leave you with is don't stick with something that doesn't bring you value. So if you've decided the easiest way to get vegetables in your diet is to have a green smoothie every day, but you're not enjoying it, you don't have to stick with the green smoothie. You can find another way to incorporate those positive things in your lives. And so we'll look at some specific examples related to the areas Johnelle identified earlier. I do want to present an image here. And when we look at how people process information, how they change their health behaviors, we use different models. And these are just ways that we can organize information so we can try and understand all of the moving pieces. And this is one of the very well-known models for that. This is from the trans theoretical model, and this is the stages of change. And it is very helpful in understanding how someone moves through decision-making and changing their behavior. And so you can see that many of us might have been here at the beginning of the lecture tonight in the stage of what we call pre-contemplation. We had never heard of sense of belonging, or we hadn't really thought about community engagement because, COVID. And so that's just been thrown out the window, or we've automatically dismissed it. Now that Johnelle has piqued your interest in thinking about these areas of your well-being, you might be moving into contemplation where you're aware a problem exists, but you don't have a commitment to action. So you might agree, yes, I need to improve the quality of my social relationships, or I don't have a real sense of belonging. How can I better establish that? And so then going through this piece, you're hopefully coming up with some ideas for how you could put that into action if you wanted to. And so action is just making that change. And so perhaps you have decided that you like the idea of walking in your neighborhood, and you're going to try and incorporate that 3 days a week. If you do that for a sustained period of time, you're in maintenance. But if you're like most of us, things will come up and you won't be able to sustain that. And so we call that word relapse. And relapse has a very negative connotation, but we have to remember relapse is normal when it comes to any kind of behavior, any of the things that we do. And the upward spiral that's presented here is a great way to capture that we can take wherever we land. If we had a busy week and we just weren't able to do those 3 walks this week, well, next week, maybe we're going to just try and get back on and just doing 2 walks a week and move through there. And of course, you can apply this to more complicated situations, but I want to just present this to you because the other important piece with the stages of change is that you don't have to start back at the beginning. You can move in and out of these stages as needed. And this can be a really powerful tool to help us remember that if we're trying to improve our well-being and we don't have immediate success right away, that's okay. And we can just jump back in when we are equipped to do so, when we've had those resources either topped back off or we've developed new resources. And one of the trending words right now, especially when it comes to mental and emotional health, and that's something that a lot of us have probably dealt with because of COVID and the ramifications, is the word resilience or grit. And I just want to encourage y'all that you can develop resilience. All of us have different levels depending on our circumstances, our experiences, and our backgrounds. But resilience is one of those key factors that can help us develop additional well-being resources and can really influence our perceived quality of life. And again, there's so many ties between that and our long-term health outcomes. So I'm gonna make it a little bit discussional. I'm sorry, it's the teacher in me. So I'm gonna go ahead and ask y'all to either unmute yourselves or use the chat box. And let's start with this area of social relationship. Can y'all give me a real life example of how you might improve or increase the social relationship you have in your life?
So Victoria just wrote in, taking a moment to think.
I appreciate that reflection.
Yes. Karen said, invite my friend to walk. Yes, I think that's a great idea. I've started walking daily with my husband during all of this, and I told him we're never going back to not walking every day because it's our time to kind of clear our heads and get going. I think another thing that I do for social relationships is I set a reminder on my calendar every Thursday to touch base with a couple of friends that I don't talk to regularly, just to make sure that they're doing okay, and let them know that someone's thinking about them.
Oh, that's an excellent idea. Let's see.
In the small environment, we see many small groups coming together to just have some time, get a little respite. enjoy some personal well-being, but doing it as a small group. So that's really we have a lot of social connections happening here as well.
Yeah, and some others that
idea.
are written here, call long distance friends more often, call or video chat, and invite family members for online yoga. Those are all great ideas.
Y'all are our people.
Yes,
These are great. Let's see. And so, yeah, quality time. Just finding those activities that are meaningful for you and that other person. Oh, Kim, I love that. Send more handwritten cards.
Yes.
I'm still a fanatic. I make my 4-year-old do that, or at least sign his name. But yes, I used to send handwritten cards to my girlfriends just as a reminder that, and I've been living apart from them for a very long time. And I think we all could benefit from that. It's nice to get something in the mail other than junk mail. And so y'all hit the points I came up with as well. So virtual or in-person gatherings, depending on what's safe for you and your area. And exercising together. And so something as simple as walking can be great. I love seeing the yoga together. And again, you're hitting multiple points. So for those of you who are like me or Johnelle and have so much going on, it's great to be able to hit 2 birds with 1 stone in those areas. All right. So what are some ways that you can feel more engaged with your communities? These might be things that you already do, or you might have started thinking about other ways. I think Johnelle had mentioned a community 5Ks earlier.
Only doing any kind of volunteer work.
And I grew up in very rural areas. And so being here in a city of, over 2 million people, there's so many opportunities to get involved with so many different causes. So that's really exciting. Okay, I see in the chat box joining virtual 5Ks. And then Karen says, need to do some research into special interest clubs around my interest. And that's great. One day I will have time to join a book club. That is a goal. Kim, welcoming new neighbors. And Bill says volunteering. Any particular programs y'all enjoy volunteering with? The food bank.
I love the food bank too, Bill. It's one of the largest. I don't know if you know this, but our food bank is one of the largest in the country. And I think it serves the largest population in the US because including our rural areas, it really has a great reach. So I think it's a great organization to volunteer with. And one that I'm passionate about is Snack Pack for Kids. So it's a way that we get extra food to families at my kids' school that may not have access to food on the weekends or during holiday breaks. So they get extra food resources sent home with them every Friday to make sure that they have some healthy meals over the weekend. And so it's important to think about those connections. How do you connect to those activities and why are they important to you? And my kids see the value in doing that too. So bringing your family into that and those social relationships are another way to build those 2 things together.
I also see animal rescue at museums, and then volunteer or donate to the Corazon Clinic, which is community health center here, or Loaves and Fishes. I'm not quite as familiar with that organization. So Victoria, if you want to add a few details about that. And I think donation is also something to really say can be still beneficial. A lot of us think we have to go and do these actions. For some of us right now, it just might not be safe or it might not be doable, but there are still a lot of ways that we can give. Sharing through social media to support organizations, making financial donations if we're able to. I know that a big tradition in my immediate family is the Samaritans children's Christmas shoe boxes every Christmas. And this past Christmas, we just didn't feel safe with a newborn in our household to go out. And so we had the option to build those virtually online. And we were still able to take part in a meaningful community outreach effort while still being safe and smart about it. AmeriCorps, that is a national organization that helps place recent graduates into places of high need.
Other
Okay,
thing
and
I
so
would just say, voting is also community engagement, right? So being involved politically and having your voice be heard, those are also important. Speaking up to your representatives, all of that's part of community engagement because you're doing it from a place of wanting to better that community.
all right, and then what about sense of belonging? And so Johnelle did point out that this is a little bit kind of a looser piece. And so what did y'all think about when you learned more about sense of belonging tonight? But you talking about voting jogged my memory of what I had included here. Because part of that community engagement, that sense of belonging, making sure everyone feels that they belong, is advocating for policies that improve all neighborhoods. So you talk about walkability. Well, many of us that are on the call tonight are probably privileged enough to live in neighborhoods that have sidewalks that are decently maintained. That's not true for everyone in the cities that we live in. And so how can we ensure that all of us have access to, you know, safe recreation, to green spaces, to the ability to walk safely to a store through our neighborhoods? I see Victoria also added in the chat, it's okay to start small and to find something that brings value. And if something feels draining, to find something else. And I would agree, maybe you think one particular charity is just really cool and you want to go and work there, and you realize it's not the best fit for you. There are many others to choose from. And so applaud yourself for taking that step and then find something that's a better fit. I also added here, creating a safe or calm space in your home or workplace, especially for many of us who may be working from home. This has been really critical for me. And so in preparing for the semester, or actually last semester, I got a nice desk. I didn't repurpose my craft table anymore. It was just time, and I had a plan and I killed it, but I tried there. I'm also seeing Karen adding in the chat box, participation in community events. I included here making a meal for a neighbor. And so you can see how the sense of belonging is both for us and then for the people around us. And then I wanted to speak back to an earlier comment, and y'all are welcome to continue entering ideas here. But Victoria had mentioned earlier that many of us have felt isolated. Many of us have been experiencing what people keep calling COVID fatigue, which is probably low-key depression for a lot of us. And so if that's you, you are not alone. We do anticipate that the diagnoses of depression and anxiety in particular are probably going to continue increasing for many reasons, but some of them also related to isolation. And so it is important to engage in self-protective and health promoting behaviors. And y'all, the best ones that have consistently been shown effective: spending quality time with people you care about and that care about you, exercise, and getting enough sleep. And so when I teach public health students, many of them are so into wellness, and they are very familiar with like the latest trends, and they'll always ask my opinion about a specific diet or a specific new workout program. And I always disappoint them because I go back to the basics: get enough sleep, eat some fruits and vegetables, and move your body. Those are the things that are consistently shown to have the best results for all of us. And learning to say no to things that won't promote your well-being. So one thing I use as a tool when I'm working with individuals is making sure what you're engaging in is healthy, safe, and legal. Got to add that in, since we're not a medical marijuana state fully, or any other kind of marijuana, but that's something that is very much of interest to a lot of folks right now. Karen brought up a great point, taking time in nature. So you've got the botanical garden, which I actually still have not visited. I've been here for just over 2 years, so I need to go there. But we're frequent visitors to all of the parks, and I was just blown away. I thought San Antonio was desert. And I have been so pleasantly surprised. And so if y'all are like me, and maybe you're not here in San Antonio, but get out and get to explore the parks and all of the excellent recreational opportunities your city has to offer. All right, so I see S. Keen has added into the chat, there's an international group that was founded in California that addresses what happens when people, women in particular, are fearful about getting out in the community. It's called Girl Trek. The idea is to take control of the environment that you live in by doing it in numbers and building community. And exercise, nutrition, and community engagement are all part of their focus. And I think that's awesome. And Shireen just found a 4-leaf clover. You're only a few days past St. Patrick's, so that's special. So these are just some of the ways that we want to encourage y'all to think about and to start incorporating. And there are a few tools, and so I will add those into the chat box here. But these are the titles. And so the first one is a step-by-step guide. It is created by SAMHSA. Actually, I have it pulled up right here. So let me exit out. And it takes you step by step through all of these different areas. It provides resources, it provides examples, and it gives you worksheets to work through all of those dimensions. And so I find this to be a helpful tool when I want that self-reflection that was mentioned earlier. And I encourage people to do a check-in. Maybe it's just a couple times a year, but figuring out where you're at. And right now we're kind of at hopefully a positive turning point when it comes to COVID. And so we're hopeful that all of us who want to be vaccinated will have the opportunity to be fully vaccinated very soon, and that we can continue protective practices. And so we can get COVID under control and resume our normal activities. And so what do you want that to look like? Think about this as a great opportunity to create a plan for yourself and where you want to go with that. One of the other worksheets is evaluating your social support. And so some of that research that Johnelle had mentioned earlier, this tool is based on that. And so it starts with a quick true false assessment here. And the first one, it reads, if I needed an emergency loan of $100, there's someone I could get it from. You can answer these easy questions. And it's not to say anything is good or bad or something is wrong. It's just to help you reflect on, do you have these people in your life? And if not, it gives you a plan for how to develop those relationships. And so I will open it up to questions if Johnelle wants to moderate while I add these files, and I will put those in the chat box for everyone.
Yeah. Thank you, Erica. I think a final thing I will just say, I know as my work life has more demands to it, and as well as being a wife, having kids, being a friend, taking care of 2 family members as caregivers. I think we can all think about how we have to juggle a lot of things. And so for me, for my well-being, it's really important that I have time for reflection and some downtime. And so I actually schedule that, knowing that I don't have interruptions and that I'm spending time working on me. And I think part of our wellness journey is we have to allow ourselves time to invest in ourselves. And we need to know where we stand before we start engaging in some of these other activities, so we can do that in a healthy way. So I really encourage you to prioritize your own well-being and yourself in a way that you can think about the types of things we talked about this evening, and you can really implement those and see the benefit of investing in your health and well-being.
Thank you so much. Very insightful. I love the combination of research and then the applicational aspects of it. Do we have any additional questions? Feel free to put something in the chat box if you like. And while we're given just a minute for that, I do want to let you know that we will be doing this every month on the 3rd Wednesday. We have speakers already set up for the whole year. In April, we're going to be speaking about functional movement and strength training. May, we have the power of civic engagement. In June, aging and caring. So a wide spectrum of topics, and you can find the recorded previous speaker engagements on our webinar at lomadevita.com. We also are very excited to just share more information will be coming, but because of our partnership with UTSA, they are presenting a scholarship in our name that will be supporting community San Antonio specific students that are going to be applying and engaging in the UTSA College of Health, Community and Policy. So we're really, really excited. We do ask that if you would like to donate, you can donate through the resources that were shared with how you found out about the webinar to begin with. And there'll be more information online. So I just wanted to give a plug for that just because I'm so proud that we get to participate in supporting upcoming students and current students in their pursuit of additional education through the scholarship, which is funded through the events that will continue to unfold. We will eventually be able to do a hybrid probably first and then live here at the resort. That was the intention initially. So, but really, really powerful tonight to speak about the collective aspect of what wellness and well-being is. And was there any chat questions that popped in at the last minute?
I don't see any more. I just want to thank
Yep.
you too for this commitment to our students. It really speaks well of your partnership with us. And I know that our students will really benefit from getting that connection with you and from having the financial support. So thank you.
Absolutely. And my intention is to be able to hopefully have some interns once we get back to having live contact with each other. So is there anything additional that you wanted to add tonight, ladies, Johnelle or Erica, before we sign off?
Let's see, there's a comment asking for the tools for self-assessment. And so these are just the titles of those documents that I attached into the chat box. So you can download those. They're just PDFs. And then we put up our emails, so y'all are welcome to contact us with additional questions.
And there was a question if this is going to be recorded, and yes, you can see this as well as all of the series. I'm assuming through the link you are registered with, you'll be able to find those. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect.
So you can go to the Loma de Vida website. And I do believe UTSA also has a placeholder. I need to get a little bit more information about exactly where to find that. And maybe with next month's webinar and speaker series, we can actually put up something at the end with additional places where people can go. So if you can't access the downloadable PDFs that Erica put up, we will be able to swing back to you can just send an email to the email that you originally contacted for access, and we'll make sure you get the information.
All right, well, we hope you all can be well with these additional resources and that you use them to improve your lives for yourselves and your family, and then ultimately it benefits all of us.
Yes,
Thank you for having us.
Great discussion.
Yeah, thank you so much, ladies. Really, really, really enjoyed it. And if you can't tell, my backdrop is here at Loma Vida, and the birds are chirping. So it's a beautiful place just to come we have a little juicery in our spa. So you can come in, even if you're not getting a spa service, and get a fresh squeezed juice or a smoothie and sit outside and listen to the birds chirp. So enjoy your well-being and your healthy beverage at the same time. So we hope to see you here, and we hope to see you next month on Wednesday, the third week of the month. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Bye.